Hey there, people! So today I'm bringing you my Terraria Brain of Cthulhu 1.4.x Expert and Master Mode Boss Fight Guide. Actually, this is for all difficulties, even Classic, and for all 1.4 versions, from 1.4.0 all the way through to 1.4.3. It's a detailed guide to the boss fight, including a description of the boss, how to spawn it, the bloody spine, summoning item, arena tips and strategies, armor, weapons, accessories, and buffs. I'll show you the fight itself, and I'll go over the drops at the end. I'll explain wherever there are differences between difficulties or between versions. This is part of my final updated series of detailed guides on every boss in the regular game. I will be going into a lot of detail, so check the chapters and the timestamps in the description if you want to skip ahead to a particular part for certain information. Even on Master Mode, this might be overkill, but I'll give you all the options that you need, all the options that will be applicable, so that you can decide what you need to do for your particular skill level, situation, and so on. The main change for this boss in 1.4 is that it is now a necessary fight in Crimson Worlds. It's basically required for game progression, and also meteorites only fall after defeating the boss now in 1.4. There are no changes to the boss's behavior with the 1.4 updates, only, of course, the Master Mode boosted statistics and the new Master Mode items. So, first of all, about the boss. The Brain of Cthulhu is, unsurprisingly, a giant floating brain, which only spawns in worlds with a crimson biome. In Corruption Worlds, you would fight the Eater of Worlds instead, similar consequences for game progression and so on. The Brain of Cthulhu begins the fight with a large swarm of 20 creepers, which are flying eyeball minions. These will swarm around the brain and fly towards the player. They'll return towards the brain as it teleports around. The brain itself cannot be harmed until all of the creepers are killed. Once the creepers are all killed, it'll split open, revealing a heart inside the brain, with an eye on the heart inside the brain. It will then try to ram the player by teleporting and moving around more quickly than before. Both the Brain of Cthulhu and its creepers are only immune to the confused debuff, so that means you can inflict all kinds of debuffs on the brain and its minions. In Expert and Master Mode, the creepers and the brain can randomly inflict numerous debuffs on the player. Damage and health points are massively increased on these difficulty levels for both of them, but their defense does not change. In the second half of the fight, the brain also begins creating 3 illusionary copies of itself. As its health gets lower, it becomes harder to tell the fake illusions from the real brain. Defeating the Brain of Cthulhu will allow the Tavern Keep NPC to spawn, and will also begin the meteorites can then fall from the sky after you've defeated it. Defeating it is also necessary to craft the Deathbringer pickaxe, to mine obsidian and hellstone. Thus, it is now mostly necessary to fight the boss in order to progress further in the game. I mean, it's sort of technically possible to get around it, but basically you're going to want to fight this battle and get those materials and get that Deathbringer pickaxe. Technically, you can get enough loot for the pickaxe and thus progress in the game without winning the fight, because you can get the loot from the creepers actually in the first phase of the battle, but you will not get the Tavern Keep NPC or the meteorites without defeating the Brain of Cthulhu. So next up, spawning the boss. The Brain of Cthulhu will only spawn in the Crimson, and it will despawn outside of either the Corruption or the Crimson if you somehow have both in your world. If you leave the Crimson, it will stop following you, and it'll move away, and ultimately it will despawn. Normally, it will spawn after breaking the 3rd Crimson Heart in the Crimson. You'll find those underground, and every 3rd heart thereafter, it will spawn again if you keep breaking Crimson Hearts. It can also be summoned using the Bloody Spine summoning item. It's 15 vertebrae and 30 vicious powder to create that item at a Crimson altar. This summoning item will also only work in the Crimson. Vicious powder is crafted from vicious mushrooms at a potion station, or can be bought from the Dryad during a blood moon. So in terms of arena and strategies, if you're breaking Crimson Hearts to summon it, be ready to get out of the area where you're breaking those quickly. Ideally, you want to sort of pick, you can pick the harder ones to break first if they're harder or like more difficult to access, and the one that's easiest to escape from is the Crimson Heart you want to break last as the 3rd one to summon the boss. The easiest place to fight the brain will be the large open space in the underground Crimson. So there's the little like pathways off to the Crimson Hearts, but it's that large chamber It's sort of like, it looks sort of like a giant heart chamber. That's going to be the best place generally to fight the boss. What you can do is build rows of platforms across that space. That'll make you a good arena. You'll want one probably across the bottom to stop you falling in any sort of chasms that are at the bottom of that chamber. And then you can create other rows of platforms higher up, basically as high as you can jump between is mostly, whether it's a single jump or a double jump. You don't need a lot of rows of platforms necessarily. You just need to be able to get between them quickly and be able to jump up and drop down. You can optionally add some stairs with those platforms to help your vertical movement, or again, just jump between them. If you decide to fight the brain on above the ground in the Crimson, be careful that your arena is not too high up, because if the Crimson background starts to disappear, even just when you're jumping, the Brain of Cthulhu can despawn. So that's one reason to fight it underground. There's usually a large enough chamber in the underground Crimson to build an arena and fight it there. So it is possible to fight it on the surface, but not really recommended because of that possibility of it despawning if you're too high off the surface. Campfires, heart lanterns, bass statues, gnomes, and sunflowers are all things that you can place in your arena that will give you various buffs or bonus effects. If you're a magic user, also place one or more stars in a bottle. A small pool of honey is also helpful. If you happen to get down into the underground jungle and take a bucket with you, you can collect a little bit of honey and create a little pool in your arena in the Crimson to dip in occasionally. That'll help give you a huge regeneration boost. Kind of only if you need it, though. It's a lot of trouble to go to. I don't usually bother with that at this stage of the game, at least. Piercing and area effect weapons are going to be very effective at destroying the creepers in the first phase of the battle. Once you've destroyed the creepers, you're going to want to switch to a more powerful single target weapon or something that inflicts debuffs, or both. High knockback weapons can also work very well in the second phase of the battle to keep it away as it charges. It's actually the only boss that is susceptible to knockback. So as it charges at you in the second phase, use something with knockback to keep it away. It's also a very good idea to gather and use as many life crystals as possible before taking on this fight, particularly if it's your first time doing this battle or if you're worried about whether you can win it. So life, obviously, more life is going to help. That said, if you haven't taken on the Eye of Cthulhu or the Goblin Army yet, be aware that they will both start spawning and coming after you once you hit 200 or more health. You can get all the way up to 400 health with life crystals alone. Magic users will also want to craft and use as many mana crystals as possible. If you use 9 of them, that's the most that you can use. That'll get you to your 200 base mana before considering other bonuses from armor and accessories and so on. So in terms of armor, silver or tungsten is kind of your baseline recommended at a minimum. Gold or platinum armor will be better. Class-specific armor will be better. Gold or platinum is kind of optional whether you want to go there at all. If you do want to get gold or platinum particularly, even for silver and tungsten, you can use Spelunker potions to get those ores more quickly. Generally, it's going to be best to use a fully matched armor set to get the set bonuses. If you are doing a class-specific playthrough or you just want to specialize, there are more options now for specializing earlier in the game. Mages can use either a magic robe and a magic hat, or they can use jungle armor by this point. Both of those will take some time to get. The diamond robe is the best of the magic robes, especially the gem robes, followed by the amber and ruby robes. The gypsy, also known as mystic robe, depending on the version, is also quite a viable option as well. You get that one from the traveling merchant. The other ones are crafted at a loom with cobwebs turned to silk, and then some gems, make a robe. Even with first you make the robe, and then you add the gems to make a magic robe. Anyway, even with a gem robe or either of the magic hats, the jungle pants will still give you an extra bonus and some extra defense if you're using magic. Ranged players can craft fossil armor using sturdy fossils from the underground desert. It's not too easy to get, but if you want to specialize early as a ranged player, that's your go-to fossil armor. On 1.4.1 or later, not on 1.4.0 unfortunately, but the updates after that, which currently, as of this moment, is only on PC, but the rest of you will be getting them sometime, hopefully this year. Anyway, summoners can craft the Flinx coat and the Flinx staff on 1.4.1 and later, and you'll find the materials by fighting Flinxes in the underground snow biome. Its Flinx fur does not exist on 1.4.0, does exist on the updates after that. The Flinx coat for summoners only takes up the shirt slot, so you can use another headpiece and another set of leggings. My recommendation, if you're willing to go to the trouble, is to use jungle armor, headpiece, and leggings, because that way you can actually mix those two classes. You can be a mage and a summoner at the same time, sort of, at this point in the game, by using the Flinx coat for the summoner stuff. And the jungle headpiece and leggings actually give you just as much defense as platinum armor, as the corresponding pieces of the platinum armor. So why not have the magic boost as well, right? But of course that takes a bit of trouble to get that from the underground jungle at this point. You don't have to go that far. Again, a lot of this is overkill. Alternatively, summoners can also wait until after they defeat the Queen Bee and use the bee armor. If you are playing a summoner playthrough, defeating the Queen Bee before taking on this fight is a very viable option. Arguably a good option. There is no real melee-specific armor at this point in the game in Crimson Worlds, so the Gladiator armor is kind of the only thing. It gives you immunity to knockback, but it's very hard to obtain, and it's not otherwise really specifically melee per se. It just gives you immunity to knockback. Melee players otherwise will generally just want to use the best available ore-based armor at this point in the game. Best you can get, that'll have to do. In terms of weapons, overall the easiest option is to use the best bow that you can get, so that'll be gold or platinum, or ideally best option of them all. At this point, it's the tendon bow. Jester's arrows are going to be the best ammo for the first phase of this fight, while Frostburn arrows are going to be the best in the second. There are other options, of course. Spiky balls from the Goblin Army can also be helpful. You can throw them at the creepers in the first phase of the fight right from the beginning, or you can scatter them around the arena, or you can throw them at the creepers, and even if you miss, spiky balls on the ground and in the arena will do damage to those creepers as they move around. In the second phase, you can finally damage the brain. Grenades can also work very nicely to take out the masses of creepers at the beginning, but you're going to have to be very careful if you want to take that approach. They are very effective, but you can hurt yourself and kill yourself that way, so be careful. Anything that inflicts a debuff can also help in the second phase of this fight to identify which one is the real brain in expert and master mode specifically. So in terms of class-specific weapons, magic weapons, a gem staff, particularly the diamond staff, is the best at this point. Ruby or amber staves are the next best. So any of those three are kind of the go-to best options. If you're having trouble finding the materials, the emerald staff is the next after that, because it also has auto fire and piercing, and any of the ones lower than those four do not. So you want emerald or better ideally, because you get auto fire and piercing, and any of those top four are going to do a lot better than the bottom four, I think it is as well. The Crimson Rod's Cloud can also be quite helpful as an extra. If you manage to get a Crimson Rod, you will sometimes get that breaking those Crimson Hearts. So if you got it, basically place the cloud and then fire away with your regular weapons. If you're lucky enough to get the Gray Zappinator from the Traveling Merchant, that is, of course, also an excellent choice for the fight. If you're really desperate, it is also possible to go all the way down to the Underworld and get the Demon Scythe. It's going to be a lot of trouble to get that weapon, but it is an incredibly powerful weapon for this fight, and it is possible if you really want to go that route. In terms of melee weapons, a strong, large sword or even a spear can work well if you're careful about distance and timing. For direct contact weapons like those, you're going to want to make sure to use something that deals high knockback. Again, this boss is susceptible to knockback, so that's a useful stat. The Blade of Grass will be a great choice if you're willing to go to the trouble to get the ingredients from the underground jungle. Again, not easy to get, but it is one of the best melee weapons that is technically available at this point. Other strong and fast swords, such as the Katana, the Falcon Blade, or the Blood Butcher, can also work well. The Rotted Fork or even the Trident can work well as far as spears. You'll have to be a little careful to hit accurately, particularly if you're on Expert Master. In that second phase, that's going to be a struggle maybe to identify which one is the real brain. So keep that in mind with those options. Projectile melee weapons such as the Star Fury or the Enchanted Sword are workable, but they're a bit limited. The Star Fury's stars in particular may be blocked by the ceiling if you're fighting underground, so unless you keep a large enough gap above you, that's going to limit the effectiveness of the Star Fury and its stars. The Flaming Mace is also a good option for this fight because it will score multiple hits, and you can keep it orbiting around you, which will kind of keep those creepers away as well. And of course, lighting it on fire, debuffs are very useful against this boss. Again, Expert Master Mode second phase, particularly if it's on fire, just like Frostburn or Poison, you'll see which one's taking damage. That's going to help you out a lot. The Chain Knife is also a workable option for melee. Not great, but it can do. Good yo-yo, such as the Amazon or the Code 1, ideally with a counterweight and a string, can work very nicely for this fight as well. Really anything with the ability to hit multiple creepers will help you in the first phase, whereas high damage and knockback are going to be more important in the second phase. In terms of ranged weapons, again, spiky balls, grenades, and/or a good bow are among the best option, but there are many others. Guns can work well for this fight, but different guns may be different, better, more effective for each phase. The boomstick is a good choice overall, particularly in the first phase. The Undertaker does also work, which you're going to get for sure if you smash one of those Crimson Hearts. The Mini Shark is a great option, actually, in the second phase. In the first phase, it'll mow down the creepers pretty well. In the second phase, it fires fast enough to keep the brain away from you, so you can kind of pin it down. Very effective. On 1.4.0 only, you can get the quad barrel shotgun by this point in the game, which is also a great choice. Post 1.4.0, it's only available after defeating Skeletron, but 1.4.0 you can get it. Silver or tungsten bullets will also help if you're using guns to do some extra damage, so that'll make things a little more powerful, more effective. A harpoon is also an option as far as weapons. It'll work either by firing it or by firing it past the target and pulling it back, which will allow it to inflict multiple hits. Same with the chain knives for melee at that point. But anyway, thrown weapons like shurikens, throwing knives, and javelins can actually work pretty well in the first phase due to their piercing effects. They will go through more than one creeper, damage more than one, and the creepers don't have a lot of health, so even with those things you can take them out. Molotovs can also work nicely for this fight if you have the ingredients. Blowpipe and poison darts can work pretty well in the second phase. You can upgrade throwing knives to poison knives for some extra damage and that extra poison effect. Again, debuffs, super helpful for this fight. Bone javelins made from sturdy fossils can also work, again, particularly in the second phase because they also inflict a debuff and they'll only stick in the real brain. So, good option there. Summoner weapons, by this point you can get the Leather Whip or even better the Snapthorn Whip. Whips are highly effective, particularly in the first phase. They can hit multiple creepers at a time, so you can take those out, keep them away, and so on. In terms of minions, the Slime Staff, the Vampire Frog Staff, or on 1.4.1 and later, the Flink Staff will be the main minion options. The Finch Staff might struggle as far as damage, although it does have a piercing effect, so particularly, I guess, if you target like farther away creepers in the first phase, the Finch Staff can pierce through them. On 1.4.3 and possibly later if they do more updates, Abigail's Flower is also, with Abigail's Ghost, is another minion that's available at this point. I don't know how effective that is. Haven't really tested it. I could see it being effective against like a swarm of creepers, potentially, because it's an area effect thing. If you've defeated the Queen Bee first before taking on this fight, you'll probably want to use the Hornet Staff. That'll be available as well. Even if you're not a summoner, having a minion staff can add some nice bonus damage, so keep that in mind for the rest of you as well. Now, in terms of accessories and buffs, helpful accessories, generally speaking, will include the Cloud or Sandstorm or Blizzard or Tsunami in a bottle, or more than one. And a Band of Regeneration, of course, is helpful. Fast running and or rocket boots, ideally something that's combined at the Tinkerer's Workshop, such as the Spectre or Amphibian boots, will be helpful. Other accessories include the Shark Tooth necklace or even a shackle. You know, anything you can get at this point is going to be helpful if you got extra slots. Fledgling winds and or A balloon, a shiny red balloon, or its derivatives will also help greatly for dodging. Particularly your vertical dodge is going to be helped by those things. On 1.4.3 and later, the Magiluminescence will make a big difference in your movement speed, and it'll also provide you with some additional light. So that's a great item, actually. I really like that one. But it's only available since 1.4.3. If you're playing Expert or Master mode, and you've defeated the Eye of Cthulhu before doing this fight, the Shield of Cthulhu can also help. Gives you a couple extra points of defense and a dodge ability, which is pretty useful. Anything at this point in the game, if you've got extra slots, anything with a warding modifier or even an armored modifier is worth equipping for extra defense at this point. Menacing or Lucky are also very helpful for boosting your damage output, and that'll help you to end the fight more quickly. The Brain of Cthulhu actually technically has the least health for the boss itself of any boss in the game. So if you can damage it quickly, then you'll take it out, and that'll save you taking more damage, obviously. So food and buff potions will certainly help as well. Iron Skin, Regeneration, Swiftness are kind of your basic ones. Anything else you can get as well. Endurance is a great one if you're doing some fishing. Of course, you should also have health potions. Regular health potions are better than lesser health potions. Honeyfin, again, if you're doing some fishing, you can get Honeyfin, and those are even better than health potions at this point. Magic users will want to have some mana potions on hand as well. Again, regular is better than lesser. Those using bows should use archery potions. Magic users can use magic power and mana regeneration potions. Those are pretty essential for magic users. Kind of generally for boss fights particularly. For summoners who don't mind doing some fishing and venturing into the underground jungle, you can get summoning potions. You can craft those as well. Hunter potions are actually very helpful in Expert and Master mode in the second phase to show which brain is the real brain. You can check out my potions guide for full details and recipes on those and many other buff potions. There's a whole section on buff potions in my potions guide. If you're playing Expert and Master mode, Expert or Master mode, you will need some kind of food for the well-fed buff. Ideally, you want the highest tier. There are 3 levels of well-fed now. Food helps you to move faster, regenerate health faster, and more. The sharpening station is also a good help for melee players. You can alternate click and get a buff on that. And the ammo box for ranged players, similar mechanism to get that buff. The ammo box will give you a buff that reduces your ammo usage, so save you some trouble. So without further ado, let's move on to the boss fight. Alright, so here I am in the Underground Crimson, and I'm going full glass cannon on this one. I've got my magic hat, my diamond robe, my jungle pants, I've got a celestial magnet for pulling in mana stars, and some of that other stuff. I've got my Shield of Cthulhu for helping my horizontal dodging. So, without further ado, I've got a bass statue here as well to help my defense. Since I am doing glass cannon, I've reforged some of my accessories to warding as well, which, you can debate. Do you want it over faster with damage, or do you want it to the defense? But anyway, yeah, without further ado, let's get this going here. These enemies are just going to keep chasing me otherwise, and I'm going to want my buffs. You can see as soon as I summon the brain, the creepers start flowing in here. And yeah, I've got the maximum well-fed buff. I've got regeneration potions. I've got Iron Skin. I've got endurance. So those are all going to help my stats just massively. I've got a diamond staff, so it can pierce through one creeper and hit another one. And you'll notice the creepers also do drop hearts occasionally, so I actually have heart reach potions. It's going to help. One of the reasons that my health's not worse than it is, given how I've been playing here so far. He said as he bumped directly into a face monster. Yeah, one of the big things is to watch out for the teleporting. I'm sitting here shooting at the brain like a dummy when there's still a creeper left, but anyway. And yeah, this second phase you really need that dodge. So Expert and Master mode, that Shield of Cthulhu is going to help a lot. I've got Honeyfin as well to give me extra health. because I'm playing glass cannon and I'm really bad at dodging, so to survive this, I'm gonna need all the help I can get. And you can see towards the end here, it becomes really hard to see which one is the real one, but there we go. I managed it anyway. Even low defense mage user with bad dodging, I managed it. I'm not gonna lie, I'll be honest with you, that was not my first attempt. But it is what it is, and let's just head back. Yeah, Bass statue and the warding and all that stuff helped a lot. You can see I'm up to 41 defense with all my buffs, despite this armor, which only gives me, let's see, 6 and 5, 11. So I've got 30 other defense from accessories and potions. Endurance is a good one for that. Iron skin as well. Anyway, so let's talk about the drops. So first of all, so I've got this nice slide on the drops here. The Brain of Cthulhu always drops tissue samples and crimtane ore, both of which are dropped by the creepers on all difficulties. On Classic, additional ore will only drop from the brain itself after it is defeated. Additional ore only, not more tissue samples. On Classic, you will only get tissue samples actually from the creepers, interestingly enough. On Expert and Master mode, though, additional tissue samples and ore will be found in the treasure bag that is only dropped on those difficulties. Tissue samples and crimtane ore can be used to craft both the Deathbringer pickaxe and crimson armor. The brain also always drops 5 to 15 lesser healing potions when you finally defeat it. It's a 1 in 7 chance that it will drop the Brain of Cthulhu mask. It's a 1 in 10 chance that it'll drop the Brain of Cthulhu trophy. 1 in 20 chance of the bone rattle, which summons a mini face monster pet. In Expert and Master mode only, it will always drop a treasure bag. That treasure bag will always contain the Brain of Confusion item, which is awesome, and 1 gold coin as well, along with a lot of those other drops previously mentioned will be in the bag instead of dropped directly from the boss on those difficulties. The Brain of Confusion item is an extremely useful accessory with an important upgrade in 1.4 onwards. It's always had a chance to inflict the Confuse debuff on nearby enemies, but that was the main thing it did on earlier versions. It's a 60% chance at this point. The upgrade, though, to the Brain of Confusion is that it has a 1 in 6 chance of dodging enemy attacks completely, avoiding all damage, and increasing your critical chance boost at the same time. So that's a huge upgrade to the Brain of Confusion and makes it a very viable, very useful weapon for really most of the game, or sorry, accessory for most of the game since 1.4. In Master mode, the Brain of Cthulhu will also drop the Brain of Cthulhu relic, and it has a 1 in 4 chance to drop the Brain in a jar, which summons the Spider Brain pet as well. So just for funsies, let's see what I got here. Of course, I got the Brain of Cthulhu relic because this is Master mode. And yeah, this is a Master mode mage world that I've been playing around with. And I got my 15. I got the full quota here of lesser healing potions. Got tons of crimtane ore and tissue samples from the brain and the minions. And in here, I'm going to get even more of that, actually. You can see those numbers went up a little bit. I also got the Brain of Confusion item. And I got some money, I think. And I guess that's it. I didn't get the pets this time around. But anyway, that's the video. Hope you liked the video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.